Okay, welcome back to the project. And I can't remember how the intro used to go. It's not too important. I think I'm just gonna talk a little bit here about how the situation I think is like really nice. Not really nice. It's like palatable, right? It's manageable. It's things are fairly. I don't know if normal is the right word to use, because normal just kind of describes the current state of affairs in any particular given situation or circumstance or period, right? So time, setting, place, it's very contextual, right? So what is normal? But I think you get the general gist of what I'm trying to say by normal. Like, things are stable. They're stable. It's not anywhere as tumultuous as it was, or chaotic and just nasty and awful. And I wanted to talk about some funny stories that you can tell in the title, and how I think yeah, it's just kind of like generalized dickishness now. It's nothing. And so I also want to make an acknowledgement of that, right? So that also means that I can tone down. I don't have to be anywhere as cautious anymore in the public either. And then I also want to make like a third topic on that, a little bit of it's not a disclaimer, it's just like a brief acknowledgement as well, that maybe I'm currently a little bit luckier, right? In the sense that things are manageable, and I realize now that I've had some part to play in it, but everyone's played some part in it to a degree. And maybe I was just more proactive at the beginning, or not at the beginning even. I didn't really do that much at the beginning. It was like 9 months to a year in before I started to actually really engage in a more serious manner. Because before I was just kind of like laughing on the inside and just kind of chuckling and laughing it off, and just kind of ignoring or avoiding. So ignoring, avoiding, distracting, putting on headphones, and just making light of things, making light of the situation. And then eventually things got, I was like, okay, this is actually serious, and I had to take measures. So that was like 9 months in before I started being more vocal. But the situation is not like that anymore in society, I would say. So I just wanted to acknowledge that might still be quite awful for a few people out there, but it's definitely not as widespread. So I just want to acknowledge that it's not like, even though the current situation now is a lot more manageable for, I think some statistically large proportion, like a larger majority of the populace isn't dealing with like public, harassment or abuse or slander or rumors, or whatever, or just horrible shit and violence and assaults, because that was happening as well. We had lots of security incidents on the transit and stuff like that. It doesn't, in retail and all the public facing service industry positions, people were just receiving so much awful mistreatment and stuff like that before. So it's not happening anymore, right? So it's like very palatable. I want to share some experiences today that kind of highlight how it's just kind of like generalized dickishness now. It's just kind of like being dumb, being a bit of a nuisance, and that kind of that's a very big contrast to the way things were maybe 4 to 2 years ago. So I guess that's like 2020 to 2023. 2021 is when I actually went out. So yeah, that's what it is. It's just generalized dickishness. Like, it's something that's like really passable and manageable. Because like one incident I'll talk about this is like when I was at the library today, it's like one of the larger branches. It's the reference library. I was in the basement, right? And actually, it's a positive experience with one of the librarians. Maybe I'll put down a different story. Maybe I won't. I don't know. We just ended up. I went to ask a question because there was a cyber attack on our municipal. Can't even find the words. It's because it's my first recording right now, right? I do batch recordings, so I'm not as fluent with my language and my communication right now. I also haven't been recording, I guess, for the past like 4 days in a row, so that's not good. But anyways, no big deal. So I had a question because we couldn't print, like we could print for free, and I wasn't sure whether or not that was still the case because of a certain cyber attack that affected our public libraries. And so what ended up happening, I just asked briefly. It was in the basement. It's like a 5-story reference library, a large building, and we got into a bit of a conversation, and he started talking, and I could tell that he was kind of bored, right? Because in that basement, and I can understand, because I remember when I was doing some jobs, and we would just hit up banter. Like, it felt like it was kind of like the old days, and I wasn't really. I feel like I was kind of at fault here, or not at fault. I felt like I was kind of. I didn't match the conversational level that. I wasn't speaking very much at all. I didn't really chime in on conversation as much. It was just intermittent, remarks. That's because, again, I've been more reserved and more cautious around people. Because, it's just such a. Not too long ago, it was a very volatile environment. It's not anymore. And but it was it was like the kind of conversation we would have had like before things went to shit, like before the quote unquote new normal, right? That's what they call it, the new normal, after like the pandemic and the thing between like what was it, Iran and the States, and then Ukraine and Russia, and Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, and the pandemic, and then social media, with like the TikTok craze, the cyberbullying thing, and that at the time also like millennials were they didn't have kids yet, so they were dealing with like all the parenting responsibilities that it's really tough, and narcissism blew up, right, as a topic. Like the whole abuse thing blew up. There was a lot of things, right? And then inflation, things are like 2 to 3 times more expensive, like supply chain disruption, inflation, crazy, real estate bubble, everything, right? Everything. And basically this conversation I had today with the librarian, he's an old guy. He's like maybe like 60-ish. Looked like he could be retired, with his colleague, the two of them sitting downstairs in the basement. And there's only like 3-4 people, I think, in the entire, not counting the librarians, 3 or 4 other patrons. And it's like the newspaper section, right? It's very quiet. And so I was like, yeah, you would be pretty bored down there. It's like quiet, no one's really talking. It's a quiet study room kind of thing. And, when I asked that question, and I gave some signs, I was trying to be casual with it. So then he was really casual, and then he just started talking about like, infrastructure and how things kind of shit, and how, it takes 3-4 months just to get things back up. And I tried, it's kind of like, that's not great. I used to work in healthcare, and I know how, not lax, but how far behind the public healthcare systems are in terms of cybersecurity, and how easy ransomware and stuff like that gets into systems. So we had like some mild conversation. He was leading conversation. Like I said, I was not really chiming in as much as I would like myself to, because again, I was kind of too cautious. I was too reserved. So there's me being aware of that, right? But it was a good conversation. It was just nice talking with someone. This kind of brought me back to like the good feel vibes that before things went kind of to shit, right? Yeah, just talking with my colleagues when we had time, and when I was doing a job actually. That I remember when I was doing jobs, both contract, part-time, and full-time jobs, where I had a lot of time to spare because I had things under my belt, I had things under control, and so did they. And we just chat, we just talk, And this is the same kind of interaction. Granted, I wasn't working at the library, but I used to just like to stop and talk with the librarians, and we'd have just a casual conversation and have a few laughs, share a few jokes, talk a little bit of our some basic, events, share a little bit of our life. Nothing too private, right? Just some casual stuff like, granddaughter had a birthday, kind of thing, or whatever, or some general connection. I think that's it. And it was nice. So then afterwards, of course, I was expecting this. So, right. So here's the general dickishness, because then the librarian switches up, and then there's a new guy. It's like not a new guy, it's a young guy. Two young guys show up. I guess younger librarians, and I expected it, but again, it was very manageable. So I want to say that to whatever. I won't say credit. It's just like I could see myself having a joke like that. This is very minor, right? So one of these guys here remembers when I used to dress up in a full winter suit, and that was part of the harassment that started, right? It's because I was wearing a winter suit, and they ended up again. They just kept bringing it up over and over again. Before it was relentless before. And it's still not welcome now, right? I'm not saying there's any better. I'm not trying to I hate the word enable, but so what I wouldn't encourage this, right? I don't encourage this. Even when I myself engage in retail, because I work in retail, I work in healthcare, I work in stuff like that. I don't do that, but I recognize that it's kind of like a reasonable thing to do once in a while. Not reasonable, it's not reasonable, it's something that slips. It's whatever, man. Right? It's just like a mistake, or it's especially in the public sector, you will just have colleagues who just don't give a shit and they'll just talk about the public. That's a standard that I hold myself more strongly against. And other colleagues I could see, they just don't care. It's kind of get it. Especially if, the situation has been as awful as it been, then they must have developed the habit of just start talking about random public citizens because they deal with the public so directly, and the public in society has been so awful for the past at least 4 years. So, and I'm part of public too, right? So they're gonna talk shit about me once in a while. And I'm giving this example because it is a funny story, and I thought it was funny what they were talking about actually. They were talking about me, and it was kind of funny because he made a joke. One of the guys, he's like, like I said, it's like this would fit it into a little bit just basic, banter and talk and the kind of shit talk we used to do back then, but it's nothing serious, right? And granted, this guy here, I could, through his tone of voice, you could tell that he was kind of begrudging about stuff like that. It wasn't done in with any warmth that I would have done with my colleagues, right? And again, this is gonna happen because librarian, where there's a lot of homeless who walks into the library, and sometimes they smell like piss or whatever, or there's some drunk guy comes in screaming at people. So I get it. Or sometimes they get really snobbish. They deal with everything that I deal with, basically on a daily basis, right? Because as a librarian, it's not too far from working at the grocery store, which is my current job, right? And so I get it. And again, I hold my restraint, right? When it comes to, I only talk about shitty people. I don't talk about like bad behavior. But if someone's comes in and they're kind of disabled or or they kind of smell funny, I generally don't comment on that. But that's my standard, right? So people have different standards of conduct, obviously, just different personal ethics, and some people just don't care that much at all. So he started saying, you know, it's like that guy was like so bad, you know, it's a funny story, you know, and I guess he must have heard something about me talk about dark humor once, because I was like, you know, it's not appropriate to have in this kind of setting. And I've said that before because I've been vocal. He's like, the dark humor doesn't exist, you know. This guy's so bad. And there's a point in time where he looked like Darth Vader, you know. It never gets old. I'm like, bro, this shit got old like fucking 9 months in and you couldn't stop. It's like, but you know, I'm like, you know, yeah, I kind of. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like passable, right? It's like conversational kind of stuff. He's not like barking at me or like before, like they would burst out and some lunatic laughter, and it was like so obnoxious and in your face, and they kind of get aggressive with you. They sneer and jeer at you. It was like crazy. But it's like he's just like with his colleague, he has like a bit of like a bitchy tone to it, right? He just had like a bitchy tone to it, and he was. That's basically it. He just had like not a very good tone to it, that's all. Talking about how I used to look like Darth Vader, and I thought that was funny. I was like, you know, that is a funny story. So I'm like, yeah, I can see it. I'm like, yeah. So I was trying to hold in my snicker on the side too. And you know, that's what I mean. It's like, that's what I mean by like general dickish-ness, right? He wasn't like totally obnoxious with it. His other colleagues like laughing as well. I'm like, yeah. And so this happened as well in the same, so this reference line, there's like a second, you know, minor incident like this, right? And before, these were so awful, right? It would be the whole staff joining in, there would be strangers joining in, and it'd be like half the room would burst out like calling, oh, this guy, they make all these kind of crazy things like, oh, this guy's like this Ching Chong Chinese commie bastard, you know, pedophile, you know, this guy looks like a creep, fucking, well, what's this guy fucking doing? What a full-on weirdo, and then go on, and they're just like so loud and obnoxious, and they're like demonstrating actual hostility and like malice, right? And now it's just like, they have like some self-control and some like, I don't know, like self-awareness, I guess that's the way I would put it. And they have like, they can think straight now. That's probably the most important. Like, they didn't let their emotions like completely override them. They weren't like jittery and fidgety like they were before and trying to get all up in your face and everything, right? You could tell from their body language that they were just, you know, they were like calm and steady and just sharing a bit something funny. Versus before, there's like a lot of hostility and aggression. And it's a lot really disproportionate and unwarranted vanity and like amusement. Like, that's what sadism is, right? It's like weird. It's not like that anymore. It's just like a fun laugh here and there, right? At someone's expense, mildly. So this happened also when I was like, there's like little like Hudson's Bay Center, that's what it's called. Before you leave that building to go to this large reference library in the city. It's like the downtown core. And once again, it was just like general dickishness. This one's a little bit more obnoxious, I will say, but again, it's nothing like it was before. Nothing. And it's like this is the kind of thing to expect on a day-to-day basis. And again, I'll talk about a little bit later on. I want to mention, of course, like the third kind of point is like, I realize that there are people who are not as fortunate to me to be in this situation that I am now. And again, I've been vocal about this because I also want to make sure that other people weren't constantly subjected to this kind of to what was not this. This is normal. This is manageable. Like, this is normal, like palatable nuisance. Like, people are just being general nuisance once in here or there. It's like one, what do you call it? Like, it's not once in a blue moon, but it's like, you know, once or twice a day, you're gonna get this kind of weird encounter, right? And that's like, or on a bad day, you might get like 3 or 5 of these things, especially if you're just out in the day for like 10 hours, so it's gonna happen. So this one was a little bit more obnoxious. But again, I'm saying that before it was really just everywhere you go. I could easily, it would be like 20 incidents every single day, and every time it'd be like half the crowd would like kind of join in, and it's just mob mentality, pure mob mentality, zero accountability, zero sense of no awareness. It was just like everyone just lost themselves to like the herd crowd, and it just became a mob of like an angry pitchfork mob kind of thing, or you know, like a group of those like fucking childish teenage self-entitled mean girls, or like the little, you know, the jocks in like the 70s or 60s, for example, or whatever, like a bunch of like dudes in like pushing, bullying around, trying to harass and assault people who just feel are like, I don't know, inferior to them or something like that. You know, it's not like that anymore, right? It's like died down a lot, and I'm basically saying that there's, yeah, I acknowledge that there's probably still a few people out there who are still receiving this, even though I'm not really receiving this as much anymore. But yeah, the second thing that happened, I guess, and this is something that was, I think it's like, these are definitely people who used to do it. It's like a group of three, you know, it's kind of like middle-aged, not middle-aged, it's like maybe probably like 30 to, yeah, maybe middle-aged. You know, you think of like the stereotypical Karen, right? Snobbish, snarky, they cackle like a witch every time they see someone. They just like got trust issues or whatever. And I don't know, it's like some kind of, if incels are a thing back in like 2016, you know, like men who like were consistently being awful to like applying a blanket statement to all women, then these are like, what's the new term? It's called like femcells or something like that. You know, it's like, but I don't know if they are. They're just like middle-aged white women who go around being snarky and awful to all men. They would go around like, oh, men, you know, men, you got it, you know what I'm saying? You know, like, they gotta share this like totally supposed to be private story of their ex or their husband in public to try and make an example, like totally allowed, right? Like it's like, you know, in a food court, and it's just like, there's this snarky attitude to it, right? This really self-entitled snarky attitude, this vindictive, right, vengeful attitude, right? And just like, with one of their like mean girl, like, and the other like 30, 40, 50 years old, and they make what's supposed to be a private conversation public, right, with intention, with a snide remark and attitude, right, to try to like put them down, and then they try to make a point about it public. They're really in the face, like, men, right? You know, that's the kind of, yeah. So that happened again, but it was very manageable. These were the kind of people who used to also like pick on. They still do now, but it's like I said, it's not really socially acceptable now, right? Because no shit, right? And I've been working towards making that so that, you know, there were a lot of people, like I said, there was like a really, another, I guess before this, I thought this was like a heartwarming thing, because like I saw that one of the, I guess, I think they were Korean. It's like, you know how rampant, like the humiliation, embarrassment, and shaming, and like bullying, and like it's just full-blown materialism, and it is in South Korea. So, and we have like, you know, like a Koreatown up in the northern district of our city, and like I said in a couple of many, like probably 20 episodes ago, there was this minor. I let out like a little anecdote about how there's like this like chubby, slightly chubby, I think he was like Korean or Chinese boy, teenage, or maybe just a young man, you know, constantly being harassed by like these, like, again, like really, that's why I assume he's Korean, because there was like Koreans, like a group of like 4 or 5 cowardly bullies, right? Mean girl bullies, teenage bullies, like just making fun of him for being like neurotic or anxious, I don't know, or bolting back and forth. I don't have much more context. I don't want to take sides here, because maybe he did something awful to them, but it doesn't seem like any of that is warranted, because it seems like he's just trying to get away from them, and they just won't leave him alone. And they're making fun of his superficial features for him like being fidgety, or he's not, I don't know, because he's like what? Because he's like chubby? I'm like, what? What is this? So then I found out like I would see later down, and then this happened to like, you know, again, like Koreans like harassing other Koreans and bullying other Koreans, right? For status and fame and appearance. Like it's a big thing. They don't just like bully like Chinese and white people and Indian people, right? They bully other Koreans as well. It's like, so like a year down the road I saw that. I think I could recognize him, but if it wasn't him, it didn't matter, because basically there was a really sweet young woman and a sweet young man, and they got together, and I was like, I could recognize that these two were the ones who used to be like harassed all the time, and they were very docile, and they just kind of, you know, tried to keep, you know, that's nice, that was nice. I was like, oh, you know, it's like, that's good. And why am I here? Why am I talking about this? I don't know, aside from it just being like really a feel-good story, is that like, I guess that's an example of repetitive. It's like a repeat. It's the same bad actors going after the same guy or the same girl over and over again, right? A group cowardly mob. Again, I was going to talk about the social dynamics and the general kind of like human behavior that's associated with like things like cowardice and jealousy, or lack of self-awareness, zero accountability, joining a mob group and all that kind of stuff. That was like, it's a big topic, of course, that was very obvious growing up in the 90s, right? But it's something that's been pervasive throughout human history, and it's something that I've never had a choice but to study, right? Because it was like imperative for what I was growing up in. And so I guess that's an example of like repetitive harassment, abuse, and bullying, and so on and so forth. My point is like it's like a repeat, right? It's a repeat, and so it's the same for me in this case. This is now the personal example, right? Like I mentioned, the second example was when at Hudson Space Center, there was like these three like middle-aged, maybe 30, 40, 50, like really snarky, snide, you know, in your face, like horrible, hostile attitude, and just like cackling, and we're trying, like, they feel like they're, you know, it's kind of they want to step on you, cackling aloud, trying to make a point in public, and they're being indirect with it now because, you know, it's not social stuff, so they keep talking about their own thing, but they direct their laughter towards me. Right before, it was like they would just start talking shit about me, and they wouldn't stop talking about me for like, you know, oh, he just has that Bluetooth on, he's listening to that, you know, that shitty opera music. I'm like, what? Who cares? Like, why do you care if someone's listening to like opera music? It's classical music. Like, what is it to you? And they bring their family in it, and it's like crazy. And it's funny because like they work for the government, by the way. Yeah, if you could, well, it's not surprising, right? Because people in power corrupts, right? Kind of stuff. And it's a lot of the stress that comes with it, and they're dealing with the public all the time. So I'm not saying that they don't have like some alibi for this, right? Because again, they've also been on the receiving end of some really obnoxious, really self-entitled people back then who had a lot of victim mentality, and kept feeling they were self-entitled to like, oh, benefits and wages and stuff like that without, and they were just trying to manipulate the system. And so what happens is, you know, people who are in power, in government like that, right? Particularly in my city here, right? Predominantly in government is, I would say, at least the majority. Yeah, it's like Caucasian, right? It's like WASP, right? Like general white Anglo-Saxon and Protestant. So it's like, kind of get where the vibe's coming from, right? Again, this snobbishness just happened everywhere, right? It was a retaliation for the kind of position that they were in. But a lot of it is actually, you know, I can't give too many excuses. So some of these people are just rich and snobbish, and that's all there is to it. Some of them are just have a horrible personality, and that's all there is to it. And there were a lot of them like that. It wasn't just because of their job. It wasn't just because they had developed trust issues, okay? It was like pure amusement and sadism for some of them, for sure. And so that popped up again, but this time was very manageable. Like I said, it wasn't, it wasn't like crazy. They weren't like staring me down this time like they used to, right? While they're like laughing in my face and stuff like that, while also not directly talking to me. So it's like like I said, it's very cowardly. You won't talk to someone directly face to face in a civilized manner about what it is. They just found that shit funny and they just want to make a fool out of, well, the joke's on them though, right? But yeah, it's manageable. It was manageable. And it's like to be kind of like expected here and there. And I guess kind of the main theme of this is like the hypocrisy that was pervasive back then and the double standards are kind of gone. They're not gone, sorry. It's just toned down so much. It's very light now, right? I remember before going through my mind was like, what the fuck are they doing? Because what were they doing, right? They were being so hostile towards someone because I was doing everything in my capacity to, wear like gear and, what was it, like a full-blown winter suit and coverall, because like I was facing like a shelter and homelessness situation back then. So I had a lot of gear on with me that I just kind of needed to sometimes protect myself from other like homeless people on the streets and whatnot, but also for a variety of reasons that were practical. And while doing that, I was always very cooperative and just kind of like what I felt was most important is just be a good citizen, right? Be on my best behavior. It's no excuse just because I'm homeless or I'm going to a shelter or I've been subject to, slander and DV and stuff like that, right? That's no excuse for me to misbehave. So I was always very civil and stuff like that. And because of that, these awful people tried to take advantage of that, right? And I said, there's so much hypocrisy in that because you guys are the ones starting security incidents. You go around getting in fights, right? And like, again, they come from all grades. It could be like old or young, middle-aged to teenage, doesn't matter. Men or women, boys or girls, white, Indian, black, Chinese, like Vietnamese, Filipino, Latinos, like they were it's just everywhere. Gay, straight, even. It's like it didn't matter. Whatever. It was just so awful. Like full-blown families, groups, couples, individuals. Again, police were overworked. Emergency services were always on the clock, right? People were getting into fights. They were cussing each other out everywhere you go, right? The trains had to stop. The buses had to stop. Pretty much every other bus and every other train had to stop for some security incident. Sometimes the police would get called in. Someone banging on the doors, vandalizing possessions and public equipment, and it was so bad because smoking crack cocaine. Other people were just, sometimes it would be someone who was pretty well off. They would just get into a fist fight, right? It could be like just a well-off, like a middle-aged man or woman, and then they'd have like a couples fight with somebody else or some crap like that, right? Or it's they look someone the wrong way and they get all like defensive and like, again, it's like very paranoid and oversensitive, and everyone's like on very standoffish, right? And yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And so the irony, rather, I was like, y'all being like behaving like a bunch of like obnoxious, fucking horrible people, and the nerve of you to pick on the guy who's, I am homeless, but there are homeless people who are crack addicts, and then you guys are like actually well off and you behave probably just as bad as them, if not worse. And I'm just being civil, and the audacity and nerve for you to go around constantly, they would go on loud outbursts, being like, this fucking sucks, fucking trans, there we go again, another fucking security incident, and they all burst out laughing and everything like that, right? And mocking and ridiculing, this city fucking sucks, the GTA Toronto, like, I'm not gonna say it, I don't want to say like what city it is, right? And I also keep my volume down. I apologize again. This is because, like, again, I don't like to like whisper. It sounds so congested, right? I want to just talk with my normal voice, but I can't because like they're like neighbors. I'm trying to be mindful of that because that's been an issue before. But yeah, it's like the hypocrisy, right, is so awful. You guys are causing all the problems. You guys are literally so irresponsible, have zero accountability in this mob mentality, bringing your significant other, your girlfriend or boyfriend or your family or your friends, and just like harassing each other and causing security incidents. You guys are causing the disruptions in transit, on commutes, at stores, you know, at work, at businesses, and yet in the public of all things. Like I had like some kid was like ran up to some, God, I felt bad for this guy, man. It was like just, it looked like he was like a 50-year-old man, and he was like hugging his dog, and he's a white man, just hugging his dog, and some like young kid comes up, young black kid with like that broccoli haircut, thought it was funny because like people were trying to be all, oh, well, I'm not oversensitive, look how edgy my jokes can be. So he goes up, he's like, oh, sir, do you mind if I cook your dog? And he starts like snickering and laughing with it. He's trying to bring his boys in and laughing. It's like, what the fuck? You're not funny. It's not a joke. That's a direct fucking disrespectful insult. You just walked up to some white guy and told him that you're gonna cook his dog. Like, you're gonna cook and eat his dog. You mind cook? Like, that's not. I'm sorry, man, but like, you don't understand. Like, they're missing the context, timing, delivery, atmosphere, audience. And comedy is a skill, guys. Like that's a directly. If anything, you're not funny. You're not funny. It's not your joke that's funny, right? We're not laughing with you. We're laughing at you. If society was like mental at that time, it was deranged. It was mass hysteria. But if things go back to some stability, you would be the weird one out. You'd be the oddball. You're the weirdo. Right, for you to go out there and tell some guy like this, you know, this guy who's just like sitting on the bus, that you're gonna cook his dog and eat it, and then think that's a joke. Where's the punchline? Where's the fucking punchline? It's just so naive, immature, and stupid, right? So you are the joke, right? Like, you are the joke. You're not making a joke. You are the joke, and they didn't realize that. And there were a lot of people like this, right? It was like half the society, half the fucking city was like this shit. And so you guys are causing, it's like, no shit, right? If you say that to a guy, the guy was like, he was like tempted to, like, you know, like Mike Tyson says, right? Old days, old school, we say, you know, people get away too often. It's like the cliche was like, you know, get away too much with being disrespectful without receiving a punch to the face, right? It was like the internet has made it so easy for people to be anonymous with being disrespectful and not getting a punch in the face. Like you should probably there should be consequences, right? Unfortunately, the kind of like country that I live in is like not exactly, tends to like punish the people who kind of have to stand up for themselves more than it punishes the people who are like genuinely awful, right? It kind of protects the perpetrators more than it does. So, but anyways, the point is, yeah, it was awful then, right? And it's not like that anymore. And so I've got to tone down too, right? So I have to be more, well, I don't have to be more open, but, well, I already am. That's the thing, right? But specifically when it comes to interactions, I noticed that myself, I don't engage, I don't interact very often, because that's not a very trustworthy society to be in, right? It transformed, right? This is the new normal, quote unquote, but it's kind of like dissipating now. And what a major point there was that I was speaking to was the intense hypocrisy, right? The double standards of you guys causing all this trouble by being irresponsible and saying that you can be authentic. That was a big thing, was empowerment. Yeah, that's so bad. Empowerment, oh my God, right? That was the whole like, crazy you know, they're deranged. Yeah, they're deranged like incel men and stuff like that. But then there are also deranged women being like, oh, empowerment, this and that. And then they became so snide and arrogant and self-entitled because they got deluded, became delusional. We're endorsing, you know. There's this meme I saw. I was like, Delulu or something like that. I was like, Christ, what the fuck is this? Yo, it's so bad. They're like endorsing, like spoily girlies. Apparently, I saw this like on TikTok thing roll up. I was like, what the fuck? This is horrible, horrible shit. There's like no self-awareness, no emotional regulation, none of that shit. There's no sense of like just calm and like steadiness in your demeanor at all. You're all just 110% raging emotions. And then you're like, oh, we're authentically emotional. Oh god. Oh my fucking. It's so bad. And yeah, that was the, oh god, the empowerment and delusional crap. It like shudders down my spine. Like I'm the weirdo? Like hell, you guys are the weirdos here. You wouldn't even know it. But right, so the double standards are gone now, right? No, they're still here, but they're lightened, they're dampened, they're really, really manageable now. This is like the normal amount of like expectable, you know, harassment you would get on a daily basis. Just, you know, once in a while you can get it here and there. That's it. Again, the audacity and the nerve. You guys say like pick on the guy who's actually behaving normal and trying to do everything that's practical in his capacity or their capacity or her capacity to manage themselves, while you guys are being authenticity, you're authentic assholes, and allowed your power, you know, to become so taken away, lose your cool, and have all the blood rush to your head, right? Get carried away with your emotional bullshit or your authenticity, right? It's like, what the fuck? But it's not like that anymore, because they're causing all the security incidents, and then they're also blaming the people who are being disruptive, and yet they're being disruptive and they're causing all these incidents, and then they're talking all this smack. They're treating the people who are being functional and civil and not causing problems, not being troublemakers. They're treating like just generally decent people really horribly. And meanwhile, they have the nerve and audacity to bitch and whine and complain about security incidents and like police getting called and like stabbings and shit. You guys are causing it. You guys are literally putting no discipline, no individual effort or responsibility into like managing yourselves, and you're part of the problem. But it's not like that anymore, and it was like that, and thank God it's not, right? And again, these people work in government, right? There's a place called like North York. I'm not sure if you know, you know. It's like a government facility. It's just all of them like that. It's like half the building is just filled with people being snarky, and if you go in there, I can't even blame, like, some of them have to be faking it too, right? They're just joining in on the culture because there's no choice but to join in, because there's so much power there. Right? They all work for government, high-paying roles, or whatever, and it's like, you know, when you're coping with power, you're dealing with power on a daily basis, you kind of have to play dirty to get ahead. And so it's like there's that office politics, right? Paper pushing, you know, kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah. So I'm sure that there are some people who don't necessarily want to play that game, but they have to anyways. And so it's like I can't even parse between who is just playing the game because they have to, versus those who really are like that. And there's a lot of them who really are like that, obviously, because they, you know, they go around treating people horribly day in, day out. But it's like kind of like isolated to that now, right? It's not everywhere you go. It's just within like that particular government building in North York. So that's it. It's not like if you board the train now, it's like, yeah, it's like people are just kind of keeping to themselves now. And you know, before, if people weren't staring at the phones, they were like jittery, fidgety, trying to make edgy jokes and insults directed at other people. But now they're not. Even when, like, I was trying to make a point with this, like I was trying to lead by example back then. look, I'm just sitting here. I don't need my phone. I can just pay attention to surroundings, and there's no problem with that. Like, you can just be calm and not have to, like, just, I don't know, look out the window and just be still and steady and calm. You don't need that, the blue screen just to keep yourself occupied. You don't need, like rancid, denigrating humor, comedy that like puts other people down just to keep yourself amused. And then you take away that hit of dopamine, that hit, that high, that crackhead. You're on a high on your phone, you're on a high on your emotions, you're on a high on comedy, and you take away that excitement, and then you throw a tantrum when you have to create drama in order to sustain yourself. So you couldn't be at peace without the drama, without the emotional bullshit, right? Well, I'm like, this is how it's supposed to look. You just sit down and it's like nothing, right? It's easy. Well, it's not always easy, but you can work on that, and you can get to a point where you just, what's the term they use? They say unbothered, right? Yeah, that's the term they use, unbothered. What the fuck is unbothered, guys? It's just being calm. That's it. Just being calm, right? It's just being relaxed and calm. And if there's some shit going down, being firm and confronting it, or having some street smarts or common sense or whatever, or conventional wisdom, or I don't know, some sensibility to just be like, let's not get too close. Let's just board the next train or move to another cart. I don't know, and have our phone and stand by the exit, for example, right? It's just like, yeah. And so I tried to lead that example, so that, again, there are a lot of people, like I myself for sure, but then there are other people, like I said, there's like that, that like 50-year-old like white guy with his dog who was like being directed all this bullshit from the youth. There's that like little chubby young man, Korean man who's being, there's like a lot of these like really docile, timid, like I guess they were teenage girls who were kept being harassed by like the popular girls. Like in the 90s, the popular girls harassing like the tomboys, right? And like tomboys are the most down-to-earth people. I don't know what to tell you, but it's like, and then same thing with like I guess what I witnessed must have been also like some strife between like exes bringing in their like girly friends and their like new boyfriends, and then taking that shit out on like random strangers. So that was happening a lot as well. It was bad, but like now it's like very manageable, and the double standard still exists, I suppose, right? Because like, let's take those two instances I listed earlier, right? Because it's like basically this young librarian, right? Not the first, that's fine. This young librarian was just he's a librarian, right? You probably shouldn't be, shit talking and making like crude jokes, and saying like, oh, he's so bad, like, he never gets old, like that kind of that snide dumb shit, right? About a patron who's just like keeping to himself. Like, you just shouldn't do that. But like, it's like just general dickishness, right? It's like, I can see, yeah, that happens, right? It's like, it's so light. It was so light. He wasn't in my face about it, and he wasn't loud and obnoxious about it. He just was like kind of whispering to his buddy there and had some attitude, but it wasn't like anything crazy. Yeah, it's not supposed to. If anything, you're the weirdo, okay? To go around like mouthing away at someone who's not even like relevant to to your life. Like, I just do my own shit. I'm doing what I need to do. You do what you need to do. Like I said, I've been civil, and the nerve and the hypocrisy that you would go around, like, what the fuck, the double standard, like, you're causing trouble. Like, you're a librarian. A library is supposed to be quiet. I don't know what to tell you. I know that's a traditional thing a lot of the youth have been trying to make, but yeah, and I don't blame them, right? Because like, yeah, I get it. Like, libraries don't have to be really quiet anymore. Nowadays, like, there's been like a movement amongst librarians to make it more like a community center. So it's more community centered than a study area. So it's like not quiet anymore at all. There's like kids running everywhere. It's like, oh, it's sort of loud and obnoxious. But even that has kind of died down now. But if anything, I'm like, you're the weirdo. Like, you're like fucking what never gets old. You never get old, man. But anyways, I was like, it's like palatable. It's like, yeah, just some dickishness. Like I could see myself when I was like kind of bored on my job, I would let slip a mistake like that sometimes, and it'd be like whatever, right? But again, that would be my mistake, and I just own up to that. That's why I say I hold myself to a standard to not do stuff like that, unless that is a direct colleague who keeps being, aggressive or confrontational and being a problem to me directly. I don't really treat people who are not in my lane, who have made direct contact with me, or being, not even just passive aggressive stuff. So that's indirect. Like if you haven't done anything to me, then I won't do anything to you. That's just how it is, right? It's not my business. It's not my business. Or, if it is regarding someone else is being harassed, I would just say, I'm seeing something going on. I go to the manager about it, go to HR about it, right? I wouldn't necessarily get directly involved myself because I don't know the full story, all the side. I don't have an objective take, an objective perspective on the context of the situation, right? But again, this is all this stuff that I do. Nobody reciprocates it. Not okay, right? It's like some of my colleagues with that too. They would take a very one-sided take. They wouldn't see multiple sides. They wouldn't listen to one story, not all sides and stuff like that. And they would constantly butt their heads into our affairs, like me having an argument with someone else or whatever. And they would butt their head in, take sides. It's like, what the fuck? You don't know the context. You don't know the story. Stay out of it, right? And stuff like that. Right? That people wouldn't do that shit. So the same thing happening here. Seeing at the library, it's like the irony, right? The fucking irony, the double standards, hypocrisy. That you're a fucking librarian at a library. And you're commenting on some dude. So they're like, what is up with that? Like, it's like. So, but again, you could expect that. And it wasn't big, it was obnoxious, and I could see myself working with colleagues who would do that, because I've worked with colleagues who do that, and it's to be expected. And it wasn't big, it wasn't outlandish, it wasn't crazy. He wasn't like hypersensitive. He was actually very calm. He was fairly calm. He was just having some snarkiness in his tune, and that's it. And then same thing over there. This one was more overt, but like this group of like 3 like middle-aged white women out there who were these were people who constantly pick on me all the time, right? But they were standing directly in front. It's the irony of them. Like people are going in and out of the entrance. It's so busy there. It's the Hudson Bay Center, like right before the subway transit, right? So it's the entrance to it, and they're just standing directly in front of there with their like 3 or 4 group of like snobbers, self-entitled banter and kind of this conversation, totally oblivious to everyone else, not caring. Now I guess other people don't care either necessarily, it's fine, but it's just the situation is like you behave so poorly that you just stand directly in front of an entrance. We have a really busy district in the city and like shopping mall, people going in and out, and you're just kind of like almost blocking the hallway, blocking the entrance of this really crowded area, and then have the nerve and audacity to start like picking on someone who you've been picking on for like years out now at this point. Like it's like crazy. It's like I wouldn't be surprised at like this like texting like messages here back and forth about this guy, about this me, or other people, or other groups, or other girls, or other men, or other boys, or other couples. Like they're like so like the gossip girl, right? Who grows up and still stays like that and becomes like a bitch, right? It's like fucking, it's crazy. The hypocrisy, right? But again, despite the double standards and the irony and the hypocrisy, it's like they weren't totally in the face about it. They weren't so obnoxious. They weren't crazy like they were before. And probably the biggest telltale sign that things have returned to like some sense of normalcy, but like stability, is people didn't join in necessarily, right? Like most people just kept passing. It was them. It was just them. Before, people would join in and it'd be like half the crowd would just join in, like a bunch of sheep, lemmings. Like one lemming runs off the cliff, they all run off a cliff. Herd mentality, like peer pressure, like lots of peer pressure, lack of accountability because it's lost among the crowd. Like, again, this is a topic for another video, but not another podcast episode. But I didn't do it because I don't feel like it's necessary anymore, right? But I do know that I want to be fair and say, yeah, there's probably a few people still, there always will be a small group of people who will continuously be subject to this still. Needless to say, my point is it's very minor, right? There are those double standards. There was that. They're just a nuisance now. It's like a pest. It's like the fucking gnat, mosquito coming on the way, just swatting. Right? It's like a pesky nuisance kind of thing. It's like fucking. There's some like general dickishness. It's like. So yeah, I got friends who do that too. I got colleagues who do that too. And sometimes I slip up and I do that too. Like today, I want to be fair here, right? Like I like to be objective. So today, there's a guy, I think it was like his wife or his like sister or whatever. It's like probably like, he was disabled on a wheelchair, right? That's why you say there's like a slip up on my part. They were just having fun. But it was like snowing outside and he was being like pushed. And of course they were just playing around. So he had to stick out like Hogwarts, let's go, away we go, and she's like pushing him on the street, like not on like on the street, on the road side, and it's a very busy intersection too, right? So I was like, and on the inside at first I was laughing, right? So I had a smile on my face, but I didn't laugh aloud because I didn't, I was like, yeah, you're kind of disrupted because like there's cars behind them, they're on the road and they're doing this, but I think even the drivers were having a good laugh because they could tell, I could tell, everyone could tell that they're just having a good time, right? And it seemed like nobody was in a rush because it seemed to be like, I don't know, it's kind of questionable because like mid-afternoon on Saturday, people do have places to go, but you can't really be be doing this stuff on the street, on the road. But hopefully things are, I think, it was just some play there, and I thought it was funny. Other people thought it was funny too, and they thought it was funny, right? They were just like how sometimes I do things just to make people laugh, right? I make like my jokes are really crude. I like, ching chong, eyelids is like a paper slip kind of thing. Like I do stuff like that. Again, in the right context, timing, setting, delivery, the right audience. Like I give social cues and context. I offer myself as the butt of the joke first, so on and so forth. And I make sure that the person, the other party, is like they're cool with that, right? It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to sign a contract, like informed voluntary consent. Well, like that's a basic, like it's subtly communicated, right? But basically, somewhere along the line, the bag dropped and then food spilled out, and I let it all laugh, right? So, yeah, and so that's my slip up there, right? It's like a little slip, but and then I immediately shut it down. I shut it down, right? So that's that's what I mean when I say like there are mistakes happen, right? Mistakes happen. And I do recognize that I hold myself to a different standard that a lot of my colleagues and friends and obviously strangers and other people who are just not great people, they don't hold themselves to that kind of standard. But even like just regular normal people obviously don't hold themselves to this kind of standard anyways, right? So that's kind of like the point on personal ethics kind of thing. It's like it's very passable and manageable. It's very just normal, like shits and giggles now. So, and that's great. I want to say that's really, really, really good. If you can't tell, this entire video, I've been again, I hate the fact that I have to like tone down my volume like this, but that's why I have the volume amped up pretty high on the mic. But if you can't tell, I'm in a good mood, right? And I'm just I'm happy, right? It's like none of this has been profoundly negative. Even when it's talking about like negative shit, right? Like none of it really, like, it's nothing. It's nothing, right? Because yeah, it's like nothing now. This is like a normal amount of you need. In fact, I would say I say this is necessary. It's necessary. Like you need a little bit of like, you need to test or push the boundaries a little bit, right? You need some discord, some a little bit of harassment. You need a little bit of like, some insult, like something that goes beyond just like offense, right? Offense is usually the difference between an insult and offense. Obviously, offense is something that's like on the recipient is like blowing it out of proportion, right? it's a non-issue and they're making it an issue, right? Something goes beyond that into harassment. So obviously, when the ownership of responsibility is more on the perpetrator than it is on the quote-unquote victim, right? On the receiving end versus, I don't even like to use these words. People politicize the whole victim and perpetrator thing all. But basically, it's on the person who's causing disruption, very obnoxious. They take proactive, they take the first step and continuous, so it's frequent, it's intense, and it's over a long duration of period of time, right? So it's really inappropriate, really unacceptable. That has also died down, right? I can't remember what point I was talking about, but I don't even care, right? It's normal. It's very normal now. Things are like very, very normal now. Very normal. I don't even know what the right word is, normal or not. But it's good. It's good. Yeah. Well, you need that. Oh, that's my point, right? My point was that you need that once in a while. You need that. You need to test the boundaries. You need to push the boundaries. You need to give more than just, more than, there are people who just get offended at everything. And then there are people who constantly go out of their way to like denigrate and put other people down, harassment, right? Like legitimate harassment versus people getting offended. And there's the fine line, the balance in between, right? So the level of moderation, the stability in between constantly having victim mentality and getting offended at everything, and the opposite extreme, which is like constant harassment and bullying and abuse, which is like victim blaming, right? So in the middle, right in the middle is like you need like stability. That's like the 80-20 Pareto rule is a good example of that, right? And a good concept to apply, right? Like 80%, right? That's like 4 to 5 ratio is positive, and you need that like 1 to 5 or 20% that's negative. You need some criticism, you need some banter, you need some insults, you need some conflict, just to remind people of what that's like. And also some of it's actually useful, right? Some of it's actually good. Like I've given like many examples in my previous episodes of like appropriate negative things, appropriate inappropriate things, right? It's like a paradox in a sense, but it's not a paradox because you need some negativity, right? Things like constructive criticism is a very obvious one. There's like sports banter, right? You get like flirtatiousness at nightclubs, right? You get what's another one, right? In like running jokes between your close group of friends, that's like 4. 5, like free expression of opinions, like really, it can be really crude, just free, uncensored, raw, like media components like this, right? You're allowed to do this. This is like, you can make a video about this. You can make your own opinion uncensored. You can cuss. You could say shit. You can like fuck this, fuck that. To express yourself on a like the internet, right? So I listed just like 5 off the top of my head, right? Banter, bragging, flirtatiousness. What was the other one? Running jokes, right, within a close group of friends, and like multimedia, like not just multimedia, but basically like the digitized media forms. Like those are just like the top 5 things that I just listed off the top of my head. I didn't even have them planned out. There's a lot of places, and we need that destructiveness, we need that kind of negativity, we need some of that, right? We need to push the boundaries, and we need that even in the daily, there's water cooler gossip, right? Once in a while, that's fine. It happens only on break, hopefully, right? If it happens only on the break, that's fine. It's not good to have a workplace that's like that for 8 hours, 5 days a week. So that's a toxic and very nasty environment to be in. But if it's like happening just at your 15-minute break, you're kind of venting with your colleagues. So there's number 6, water cooler gossip. In the warehouse, there's a lot of like, we're just like shouting across. They're like, hey asshole, where's my order? And we know it's just you being, just being cool with the boys out there. Cause like you're at this side of the warehouse, he's at that side of the warehouse, you see up a shout. So then you just contest. There's like, we're just fooling around, right? We're just fooling around. Right, so that's number 7, right? Even in the workplace, in the right setting and time and place, you got stuff like that. There's so many places where you can do, right? And you need that in society. We need that kind of like mild, like again, once in a while, you got to be subject to this, right? And I was like, today, it's kind of like a good example of like what a normal day is, and a normal amount of like manageable, like just open snideness or some petty people or some like fucking annoying nuisance, right? This annoying person over here. It's normal, right? And we need that, and that's good. And yeah, so I guess 2 points leading up to this thing, right? I mentioned, again, I recognize that maybe I'm in a more like fortunate position to not be subject to this anymore. I mean, subject to, this is all good, this is good, like, this is great. But I'm more fortunate to not be like my era of this stuff is kind of like ended, right? But I know that there are other people who are still subject to this on a daily basis. I'm not trying to take away from the fact that there always will be people who are still being subject to the shit that I had. Like just open, public, mass, like crowding, like targeted, very targeted. Again, that's another thing, right? That you can, as long as it's not targeted as a specific person, it's kind of fine. You can still talk shit and stuff like that. Notice how every time when I speak in my videos and stuff, again, another just like general guideline or conventional wisdom or like common sense or whatever, it's just like you don't identify, like it's private, it's confidential. You don't point out that woman over there, or to point out that man, or point out that couple, or point out that family. You don't point fingers at, like, not supposed to do shit like that. That's just because you can ruin someone's life. That's basically why you don't do stuff like that. You don't do shit like that. It's just duh, right? You have to be brain dead retarded for that. To participate in something like that. That's what cancel culture was, right? That's another thing that was like one of those many factors, like war and politics and social media and shit like that. It was like, that thing was also a big thing. So, but this is normal now. This is good. This is like, we need this kind of like, this is like, it's like a healthy amount of like, general negativity that sometimes slips out in the wrong places, but it's supposed to be a little bit chaotic at times, but just manageable, and that's good. So there's stability, and that's the most important thing. And God forbid we don't want to rely on like the other forms of, because the best, in my opinion, like I don't know if this is an opinion, I just believe this to be the truth, but I would not want like an authoritarian government, or a militarized government, or a communist government, or a cartel, or criminal organization affiliated government. So those are like 4 different examples of like abuse of power for control done in ways that are long-term destructive and unsustainable, like political corruption, right, in terms of like communist governments or fascist governments. And then militarized governments where the militia owns, like the military kind of takes control and power of the nation through violence. Then you have, right, gangs and controls, right? You could list, a bunch of countries that are kind of like, that have examples of this, right? In Latin America, over in East Asia, over in like, even in like Europe, like the southern states, some of them have it. So it's like military, like it's good to be in a society where people can kind of like independently have some, or at least it wasn't like this like the past couple of years, but it's kind of when there's stability in a society where people are, it's not a full democracy. It shouldn't be a full democracy, because full democracy is also cancer, right? Because that would be mob rule, that would be mob mentality. It's like, yeah, people have freedom and independence here, but there's also like a bit of it's like a meritocratic democracy kind of thing. or whatever, so it's like maybe like a social democracy. I don't know what you call it, but the point is, I don't want to get too much into politics of this, right? But long story short, like, people are able to make these decisions and work on themselves instead of having some external overarching power in government trying to dictate and force people to take control of themselves, right? Through military means, or corrupt governments, or criminal organizations and blackmail, or a cartel, stuff like, we don't want stuff like that, right? Like, if you can't do it and society falls, if people can't do this themselves, if they can't take responsibility for their own behavior by themselves, then and it collapses upon itself, then it's very hard to achieve this stability once again. Once it's lost, it's pretty much almost irreversible, right? Because then it's so much easier for other more debilitating and just overall very destructive forms of control take what, I can't find the right words. They take precedence. They end up becoming more of a what am I doing? It's like fucking, I'm trying to flip pancakes right now. Right? But like, yeah, well, this is nice. It's good. You can tell I'm not focused too much on my communication skills right now. I'm just happy, and that things are kind of like, I don't know, people aren't being treated like shit anymore. Like, it's like consistently all the time, everywhere they go, and people are like more or less, that's good enough, right? There still needs to be, like I said, that kind of chaos. There still needs to be that kind of unpredictability. There still needs to be that kind of harassment here and there, this snicker and snide, and there needs to be that arrogance here once in there. But yeah, just kind of like a reminder, but also it's like sometimes it's just like playful, or it's like sometimes it's a mistake, sometimes it's accidental, sometimes it's just sometimes, like, don't take things too seriously. So it's like, it's good. This entire episode is an example of me just being like uncalculated and no, I know I'm an example of that right now. Me in this entire episode, I'm demonstrating what that's kind of like. It's like, I don't even give a shit about the way I'm speaking right now. I'm just like, whatever, like fucking whatever, right? And that can only be afforded when people have their shit together. And people do have their shit together now, more or less, just enough, right? So, not discounting the fact that there are people who are still going through it, unfortunately, but like, more or less, it's like good now. So, as a result, I think the last thing I end this off with is that it's probably not important anymore to me, that I don't really have to release I don't know, maybe I will. Well, I'll just drop like the fact that maybe I do want to continue with that series. I just recently thought about my schedule. I'll make an episode about this, but recently I decided on Thursdays being the day, Tuesday or Thursday, I'm not sure which I've committed to, being the kind of like the social issues kind of thing that focuses on like negative impacts and consequences of certain social issues. And I didn't originally want to focus on something so personal. I just wanted to talk in general, but then it became personal. So then slice of real life, it ended up becoming a topic. I don't know. Maybe I will continue with it every Thursday. Maybe I won't. But I don't see the real need to do that anymore, given that like it's a manageable amount of like shittiness, right? Right? It's just like, it's like meh. It's like it's like, yeah. It's a manageable amount of shit. People have like their stuff together now. They're more composed. They're like, yeah, it's like generalized, like I said, generalized dickishness, Before I could say that there was no human decency, But I can't say that now because now it's just like, it's not, there is decency. Basically, that's what it is. There's stability, there's decency, but there's just some like, some random insults here and there once in a while, and random snide comments here and there once in a while, but that's nothing. There's some attitude, right? It's like some attitude. Before it was like very hostile, it's like hostile attitude. Now it's like, or like, like paranoid attitude, or hyper aggressive or oversensitive attitude. And now it's just like, yeah, whatever, it's like, it's like, oh, he said that? Yeah, whatever. Oh, those bitches over there said that? It's like, yeah, well, you're the weirdos, right? You're standing in front of like a bustling area. You work for government and you're like literally like dogging on people all 24/7. I'm not the one who's weird here. It's you. But it's like whatever, but like, because it's like manageable. It's like nothing now. It's like nothing now. Yeah, that's good. So I don't. I'm not gonna list the key takeaways. It's not too important that I summarize everything. It's just this whole episode is just me talking, like very, very, like wishy-washy talk. It's like it's just one of those like very light, super very informal. Like I wouldn't even call this like much of a conversation. It's just like, it's almost like this whole entire episode has just been kind of like shits and giggles kind of thing. I don't know. It's there's not. It's like like veering here and there. It's like meandering. All right. It's not even appropriate for a podcast episode. It's just good. This is good. It's good. Obviously, I'll be more structured still in my next episode still. But the point is, I'm glad that things are like this, and I'm glad that to play at least a little bit of role in this. So I'm glad that people have done their part as well in restoring things to some sense of general orderliness plus a little bit of chaos. And it's like, it's a manageable, like sustainable amount over the long term. So good. That's it. I think I'm gonna leave it at that. So I don't know. I guess another point would be, I don't know if I'm gonna continue that series. If I do, in what way it's gonna manifest. This upload is gonna be probably on a Thursday. Again, I'm way ahead of schedule. Well, no, I'm just ahead of schedule, not way ahead. But again, I'm gonna toss this probably on a Thursday. It's probably gonna be a February upload. But and I'm recording this in like mid-January, so yeah. I don't know. I think I might continue the series if I think that there are some people who could benefit from it in the future, because it's gonna rear its head again. Like that mass hysteria and pandemonium comes every couple of decades, like generationally, and not even necessarily, it still happens in other countries, right? In different countries, different cities or whatever across the world, and it can get back to that point very quickly. Sometimes just be a crisis. All it takes is a little push, right? By someone want to watch the world burn, and things can go back into a state of disarray all over again. So maybe I should just like create the series just for the sake of creating the goal was to like help people who really needed it, teach them how to have like some what to kind of do, what to expect, not even necessarily what to do. I don't like to give advice, just kind of like divulge some information, personal experiences and general guidelines and principles that play when you're being subjected to continuous harassment and all that crap. I don't even want to say it, right? And I don't want to say, at this point, I don't want to say bully or abuse, right? I don't want to talk about that shit anymore, because like, again, it's like good, it's good now, right? I just basically, if I release the episode on a devil's advocate, right? I just do what's necessary for it. I don't, if the society becomes like really far right you know, like extreme conservative to the point that becomes a protectionist, then I will vote liberal. And if the society becomes incredibly like way far left field progressive or whatever and becomes delusional, and then I'll vote conservative. And if both sides are crazy and delusional, then I'll just be independent, you know, like what. And then I don't even like, you know, that's a very vague generalization, right? But each policy is different, and I just look at the specific matter at hand. So in this case, all I was doing was just catering to the environment, as I usually do. I'm just versatile like that. And you know, like, again, no choice to be this way. It's something I've cultivated from probably as early as I could remember, growing up in a household. And I guess I didn't realize at the time, but also the environment played a huge role in these like useful skills. And so I'm going to say that, you know, I may just create that series then, just because for the future, maybe 10 years down, maybe a decade down the road, 10 years later or 20 years later, or a full generation later, there will be, things will go south again, and then people will need that kind of guidance again. There will be, you know, people who are not like fake, you know, crying wolf, fake victims, like fake mentality, just trying to take advantage of the system. But people who are true victims of like serious, grave, you know, assault, violence, battery, sexual molestation, extreme forms of denigration, confinement, forcible confinement, human trafficking. Maybe I will put up that series. But it's not like it's going to make a huge difference for the concurrent future, and it's not like the people who could benefit from that. Honestly, it's their situation. Like I've been there. Like I'm basically a statistic of that. Like I'm one of those, I guess, cases. But there's so many people who have it far worse than I do. I tell you, like thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have, like millions of people who have been through far worse situations. And just like I couldn't do, you know, a lot of it's like management of the situation, but management obviously isn't like, usually doesn't mean that you have like a long-term solution. So it's not like the things that I'm going to speak on, and the tactics and the general, like, you know, state of mentality and you know, behaviors and actions that you can take are going to create a huge like, it's basically common sense, street smarts, crisis management, conventional wisdom, for those who are really lacking, and society was really lacking the past like 5 years or so, 15, so like a decade and a half, or just veered from one extreme to the other. Really lacking social sense, common sense, conventional wisdom, crisis management, you know, street smarts, right? And just general appropriateness and proper standards of conduct. Like, it's only really necessary to speak upon those things when people are not aware of it, like really lacking in it. But there's no need to speak on those things, or no need to, at least in my opinion, if you know, right, I don't like to speak too much about these things if it's not necessary. So, but yeah, where was I going? It's just not necessary, so it's not maybe for the future, like for the future generations, I might as well just to create this just for the sake of it. But I don't know. So that's it. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna put up. It's probably gonna be a Thursday upload, I believe, if I do go through with it. That's if I go through with it. It'll be like a Thursday upload. But then I might create a separate channel. I don't know, because again, the algorithm doesn't benefit, you know, generalist channels like mine, and I don't really honestly want my channel to pop anyway. So it's not important to me that I get a lot of. Well, then here's the thing. The tricky thing is with something like that, you kind of want people to see, right? Because the people who need help need that information, but then it's also like a double-edged sword, because people who need that help get the message, but then so do the people who are like being awful and hostile and full-blown like antisocial narcissists and sociopaths who are sadistic and malicious, and you know, the ones who are picking on them, they'll get the information too. So it's like, I don't know. But here's the thing, right? It's not really like, it doesn't matter, because the bullies kind of already know what that's like for the most part, what their supposed victims would do. So it's not exactly like, it can only really benefit the person on the receiving end, not the perpetrator. But I would say not only that, even the perpetrator benefits from that information, and not too happy about the divulging the right message to the wrong people, so to speak. But yeah, you know, yeah. Anyways, things are good, and yeah. So I don't know, series or not, we'll find out. So let's just kind of return to like regular content and stuff like that. I'm gonna record the next episode after this, so